TCP stands for the Transmission Control Protocol. In this video, I'm going to provide an overview of TCP. The details will follow in other videos. TCP is a very widely used protocol. In fact, it is so popular that the entire Internet Protocol stack, also called suite, is called the TCP IP suite. And because of its popularity, it is also a very carefully tuned protocol. In fact, there are many requests for comments that cover TCP. So what are these RFCs? I never told you about them before, so let me spend a little bit of time. So there are these bodies called IETF, which stands for Internet Engineering Task Force, and the Internet Society. So these bodies develop the technology and standard for the Internet. RFCs are basically publications put out by these bodies. So if they have some information to share or some new concept to discuss, they basically put it out as a request for comment, whereby the other peers in the community can comment on it, then it undergoes revision, and some of these RFCs could be standardized as well. And there are tons of such RFCs covering each and every aspect of TCP. Unlike UDP, which was a connection-less protocol, TCP is a connection-oriented byte stream protocol. What do I mean by these terms? Connection-oriented means that a connection has to be established before the data can go from one process to the other. Byte stream means the message exchange between the application process and the transport layer is via bytes. So typically the application process write bytes into the TCP send buffer, and the TCP is going to assemble these bytes into segments and pass them on. And at the receiving side, these segments are written in this TCP receive buffer from which the application is going to read the bytes. So for example, if the application wrote 500 bytes, then this may be sent as 500 bytes in the segment. But if it wrote 10 bytes followed by another 200 bytes followed by another 300 bytes, then it may wait to gather enough bytes and send these bytes out in this segment as 510 bytes. And this application process, when it is reading these 1010 bytes that are written here, may read 100 bytes at a time. So to contrast this, one could also pass messages as blocks, message 1, message 2, so on, and this TCP could take these messages and pass them to the other end, which in turn will pass the messages back to the application process. So this is not following this paradigm. So here are the services offered by TCP. Like any other transport layer protocol, it does provide multiplexing, demultiplexing service. In addition to this, this also provides reliable point-to-point data transfer. It is also a full duplex protocol, by which I mean is if you want to send data between A and B as well as B to A, the same connection can be used to send data in either direction. You don't need two separate connections. Another service provided by TCP is that of flow control, where a receiver is going to control the sending rate of the sender. For example, if you have a very fast sender, whereas the receiving process is not reading data fast enough from the receive buffer, the receive buffer can overflow. In this case, you use flow control, whereby the receiver stops the sender from sending too much data. We will cover more of this later. While flow control stops the sender from overwhelming the receiver, the congestion control stops the sender from overwhelming the network. So it ensures that the senders are not sending data at a faster rate than the routers can handle. This in turn can lead to buffer overflow at the routers and dropping of packets. So congestion control ensures that such a thing doesn't happen, well, to the extent possible. So at the heart of TCP is the sliding window protocol that we have seen earlier. The majority of these services are provided in this context. Remember what the sliding window protocol is? So this picture should help. So we have a window of packets that the sender sends. So this is the window of packets. And in response to this, the receiver is going to acknowledge the packets, and in response to this acknowledgements, you are going to clock out more packets. So as part of the sliding window protocol, we have seen the use of sequence number, acknowledgements, timeouts to provide reliability. So the sliding window protocol that we have seen at the link layer, where we employed this over a single hop, versus the sliding window protocol that we are employing at the transport layer, where the sending and receiving processes may be separated by many nodes in between. So you have to traverse many hops to reach the other endpoint. So this is at the link layer and this is at the transport layer. So given this, can you think of at least two ways in which the sliding window at the transport layer differs from sliding window at the link layer? I'm not talking conceptually, I'm talking more about what challenges will it pose implementing sliding window at the transport layer. Quite a few challenges. One is related to connection management. So when you have sliding window at the link level, the link over which you are running the sliding window is a dedicated link with connecting these two hosts. So when you send packets from this host, they are destined to this other host. And it is easy to figure out the status of this other host. For example, if when I'm in a room with one other person and I'm talking, and if you rule out the possibility that I'm mad and not talking to myself, this means that whatever I'm talking is for the other person. On the contrary, when you do sliding window at the transport layer, you can run this TCP protocol on any processes running on any two hosts in the internet. And you have no idea whether the other host is alive, listening, so on and so forth. So for this, you need explicit connection establishment before you can send data as well as tear down after you're done. That is, you need this in case of doing sliding window at the transport layer. Round trip time RTT is another challenge. At the link layer, this round trip time is almost constant. There may be some slight variation, but the variation will be very small. Whereas at the transport layer, the round trip time will vary from connection to connection. That is, for example, if I have a connection to some other host within Mumbai and another connection to some other host in New York, the round trip times I'm going to see across these two connections will be different. Not only that, within the same connection, this round trip time over time will be highly variable, depends upon the congestion that is there as part of the network path. So in case of transport layer, this timeout mechanisms that we use as part of the sliding window protocol have to be very adaptive to what is happening in the network. The other issue is reordering. At the link layer, there will not be any reordering, whereas at the transport layer, because the packets can take different paths and suffer arbitrary delays, there is scope for reordering. So you need to ensure that the protocol is robust against old packets suddenly showing up in the middle of a new connection. So I mentioned flow control before. When you do sliding at the link layer, you can definitely engineer the two endpoints to support the link. What do I mean by this is, if you have this link, you know the bandwidth delay product of this link because you have set up the link between these two endpoints. Thereby, you can choose the window size appropriately. Whereas if you're doing sliding window at the transport layer, any kind of computer can be connected to the internet. So it could be a dumb terminal which cannot allocate more than, let's say, 4 kilobytes for the receive buffer, or it could be a latest computer in the market that doesn't mind allocating 1 megabyte for the buffer. So if at the sending window size, if you are using 1 megabyte, then you're going to overwhelm this dumb terminal. So you need mechanisms to ensure that one side doesn't overwhelm other side resources. This is part of the flow control. So similar to that, in terms of congestion control at the link layer, it is not possible to unknowingly congest a link. You know what you are sending on that link. Whereas at the TCP layer, which is at the transport layer, you have no idea what links will be traversed by your packets. And not only this, the bandwidth on these links can dynamically vary over time due to competing traffic. So you need mechanisms to alter the sending rate based on the state of the network. If it is not congested, maybe you can send at a higher rate. If it is congested, you have to cut down your sending rate. So what this means to the sliding window protocols is the window is not constant. It will have to vary over time. A good time to break. Up ahead, we will look at the TCP header.